Hello, my name is Mike Johnson, and I am talking to you today for this discussion board about the sacred scriptures, sacred war, the Bible, and the American Revolution by James P. Bird. And I'm discussing Chapter 2, The Lord is a Man of War. In this discussion, I believe nothing new is happening under the sun. What happened and what is still happening is a physical manifestation of what took place earlier as narrated by the Bible. Thousands of revolutions have taken place in the world, like the American Revolution. In both cases, there were the loss of life and bloodshed in various ways. As captured in this chapter, the king failed to agree with Moses to release the Israelites. When Moses tried to apply negotiations to the Pharaoh thought it was a joke. And the Lord, man of war, had to release 10 plagues for the Pharaoh to free the Israelites. During the Exodus, thousands lost their lives, including the Israel baby boys, who were slain during Moses' birth because they wanted to reduce the population of the Israelites. On the other hand, revolutions get their people killed. There existed a brutal king who was fierce and did not want any liberty for the people in the American Revolution. People had to fight, lost their lives for them to attain their freedom and fight for ours. For example, on the slave trade revolution, both sides used African men that were slaves due to them working the lands in the area. They knew where they were going and what the terrain was like. Also, it provided more manpower for the armies, with the hopes of getting their own freedom in some way or form. In this process, many Africans lost their relatives, and many of them lost their lives and died in the war. Some were even killed just on the farm fields because they were there. In the end, individual Christians who were inspired by the Christian virtue and God's word were against the slave trade. Many people resisted the call for abolishing, but in the end, people heed to the need, and the slave trade was no more. This is an example of the revolution inspired by Christian virtue and divine intervention through Christianity that led to the revolution, which put an end to the slave trade. It is not wrong to say most of the revolution in the world was inspired by divine intervention, and there must be bloodshed and loss of life. Revolution does not come on its own. There must be a sacrifice to be paid. The Pharaoh kind of leadership and spirit is seen in King George III. This inspired a supported colonization. The Egyptians viewed themselves superior to the Israelites, which applies to European supremacy over other races. For revolutions to take place, God used American patriots who were against colonization and the slave trade. It took some time for the people to hear the call. But still, as people were exposed to the evil of the colonization and the slave trade, many organizations and nations supported the abolishing of the colonization and the slave trade. God used ordinary people to fulfill his purpose. He used Moses in delivering the people of Israel. He used American patriots in fighting against colonization and the evils of the slave trade. The question remains, how did we come to politicize the concept of movement in the West? This is an interpretation of Exodus thoughts and ideas in which movement between space is reflected as movement between one political power to another. The position space change is a similar metaphor for change in power. Exodus ideas concerning the change in space position are liberated in books, essays, and articles about advanced notions, progress, progressive parties, and political change. Revolution in current states are labor movements, and Exodus serves as a literal movement. The current one are enhanced through time and space, which indicates the original form of progressive history. Thank you very much.